Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Giri Vada Hare Hare Jai Gopi Janavallabha Giri Vada Hare Hare Yasodhanandana Raja Jananjaya Yasodhanandana Raja Jananjaya Yamuna Tira Hevan Sahaya Yamuna Tira Hevan Yamuna Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Giri Vada Hare Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Giri Vada Hare Yasodhanandana Raja Jananjaya Yasodhanandana Raja Jananjaya Yasodhanandana Raja Jananjaya Yamuna Tira Hevan Jayam Yamuna Tira Hevan Jayam Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna. Hey. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaur. Nitai Gaur Hariva, 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 Hariva. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Srimad-Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Srimad-Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 14th chapter. The title is Pregnancy of Diti in the Evening, and this is verse number 20. Yam asristyanendriyaratin Durjayan itarasramayi Dasyun Durga Patiryata Yam asrityendriyaratin Durayan itarasmarayi Vayojayema helabir Dasyun Durga Patiryata Yam asrindriyayartim Duryagyan itarasmarai Vayo yadyema helabir Dasya Durgam Patiryatam. Ladies? else? Yam, whom, asritya, taking shelter of, indriya, senses, aratin, enemies, durjayan, difficult to conquer, itara, other than the householders, asmramai, the orders of society, vayam, we, jayema, can conquer, hela be, easily, dasyan, invading plunderers, durgapati, a fort commander, yata, as. This is Kashyapa Muni speaking to his wife, Diti. Translation: as a fort commander very easily conquers invading plunderers, by taking shelter of a wife, one can conquer the senses, which are unconquerable in other social orders. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Of the four orders of human society, the students, brahmachari order, the householder or grihastha order, the retired or vanaprastha order, and the renounced or sannyas order, the householder is on the safe side. The bodily senses are considered plunderers of the fort of the body. The wife is supposed to be the commander of the fort, and therefore whenever there is attack on the body by the senses, it is the wife who protects the body from being smashed. The sex desire is inevitable for everyone, but one who has a fixed wife is saved from the onslaught of the sense enemies. A man who possesses a good wife does not create a disturbance in society by corrupting virgin girls. Without a fixed wife, a man becomes a debauchee of the first order and a nuisance in society unless he is trained by a brahmachari, vanaprastha or sannyas. Unless there is a rigid systematic training of the brahmachari by expert spiritual master, and unless the student is obedient, it is sure that there will be so-called brahmacharis will fall prey to the attack of sex. There are so many instances of fall down even for great yogis like Vishwamitra. A grihastha is saved, however, because of his faithful wife. Sex life is the cause of material bondage, and therefore it is prohibited in 3 ashrams and is allowed only in the grihastha ashram. The grihastha is responsible for producing first-class brahmacharis, vanaprasthas, and sannyasis. Om Gyan Timidandasya Gina Jana Salakaya Chaksun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Yaptitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadanti Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimakti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavari Pastyatya De Satarine Vanchakalpa Tarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Paebacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaho Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Sex life. Hare Krishna. So, this material world is called Maitunya Agra. Maitunya means sex and Agra means, in this case, shackles. This material world is described as that place where everyone is locked up. But what is that locking process? It's not bars or dogs or security guards or whatever. It's sex life. And so, as Prabhupada said, it's a principle of human society. As he says here, everyone has that desire. But through the process of Krishna consciousness and through training, one can somehow or other control it. He didn't say destroy it, he said control it. He said one should not take the sannyas order of life unless they are able to overcome this desire for sex life. But then Prabhupada made so many persons who were very enthusiastic in their Krishna conscious, fixed, and took a chance and gave them the sannyas order. He said, at least you should be able to control it. At least you should be able to control it. And then you'll be able to overcome it in due course of time. So Prabhupada gave that order, already allowed for that ashram to develop, even though there wasn't one fixed from the tendency or the desire to engage in activities which are contrary to the ashram, particularly sex life. And it's mentioned in the Bhagavatam that this desire is manifested in different stages, even within the mind. In the mind, thinking about it, arranging for it, planning for it, actually connecting with the opposite sex, and then eventually falling prey to the activity. So it's the adiras. What is that adiras? We have a natural love for Krishna. To love Krishna is natural. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sarukabunoi Savanadi Shriti Chitte Koriye Udoi. In the hearts of all living entities, pure love for Krishna is there. It's not something that comes from the outside, it's something that is intrinsic to the soul's existence. It is natural to love Krishna. But association with the material energy covers that, we say, natural propensity to love Krishna and directs that consciousness in a way that is based on satisfying the needs, and not needs, but the desires of the body. And so this same adiras, when it's diverted towards the material energy, is the principle of sex life. That's why it's so strong, because it's that same propensity to love Krishna, but diverted towards the material energy. But here it mentions that Prabhupada gives really a lot of credit, and rightly so, for those who are in the ashram of Grihastha, because a Grihastha is protected, as it mentions here, from a very chaste and faithful wife. Prabhupada speaks a lot about qualities, not qualifications, qualities and qualifications along with those qualities as the principle of success to overcome the attack of the senses in the mind. At any moment, says even a slight deviation. We saw the example of Ajamil. Ajamil he was a Brahmin. He grew up in a very pure Brahminical atmosphere and was trained in Brahminical culture. He was a young man, and he had no connection with external energy in terms of the opposite sex. He was a dutiful young boy. He would always serve his father nicely and his deity. Just by circumstance, you may say, or situation, he happened to be out and saw something that caused him such great disturbance. He saw a Sudrani and a Sudra engaging in very amorous activities in public, which was quite unusual for that Vedic culture at that time. And his mind became attracted. His mind became attracted. And so much so that he completely forgot his training, and whatever else, all the culture that he had been brought up. And immediately he sought out that lady. And we know the whole story from Srimad-Bhagavatam, how he centered his whole life simply trying to satisfy that lady who was actually a prostitute. And of course, Krishna saved him at the end. But the example is there. And there are so many examples in the Shastras. Subari Muni, great yogi, underneath the border, meditating for years. He just happens to see two fishes engage in copulation. His mind becomes disturbed. And now he wants to change ashram and get married. So there's no guarantee that one is safe in this material world. Never think you're safe, no matter how great you think you are. Because that desire remains sometimes in a very gupta manifestation, very subtle. And anything can happen, of course, based on our past experiences before coming to Krishna consciousness. Those things may still be in not seed form, but in a very, very tiny form of memory, but it's lodged in the memory. And a situation can again spark that memory to come out, and all of a sudden that desire starts to manifest again. So one has to be very careful. But here it says there's a special mercy that is there in the Grihastha ashram. A very faithful and chaste wife who is trained to serve her husband very nicely, who follows all of the religious principles, she can save her husband from being, what we say, allured away from the principles of chastity within the family. So it's interesting it says that, because usually we think that, household life means a license for additional forms of enjoyment. And of course, Prabhupada very strongly cautions and speaks about that. He says, even if you're married, don't think you have a license for enjoying sex life. He says we must very strictly follow the principles as given by the Acharya and perform the activity for the procreation of children. Now, this sounds revolutionary. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. The reason why it sounds revolutionary, because when you preach like that, it says, I hear it, impossible. That's what I hear. Not possible. So this, Prabhupada is just, too strict, or it's fanatical. It's just not possible because the wife is there, the husband is there. But the strength of one's bhakti and the principles of charity can somehow or other give one the strength to overcome any temptation that would lure way away from those principles. So that's the essence. It says you cannot conquer this desire for sex life unless you develop attraction for Krishna, strongest attraction for Krishna. Otherwise, this material entity, Maya is very strong. The whole Bhagavatam describes it in such a way that this principle of sex life is so powerful that even great personalities, we have the example of Vishwamitra Muni. He was such a great yogi, powerful yogi, performing all kinds of austerity. He was sitting in hot sun in the summertime with fires all around him, meditating and becoming absorbed in his meditation. In the wintertime, cold water up to the neck and meditating. And now he's fixed in his meditation, apparently. And all of a sudden, Indra starts to think, because if you perform austerities, you can get power, you can get position, you can actually manifest a certain desire to achieve some kind of position in the material world. So Indra was thinking, he's trying to get my post. So I have my own arsenal of young ladies. And so he sent one. And her name was Mainika. And practically he didn't even see her. He simply heard the tinkling of her ankle bells. And that broke his meditation. And then what he saw was something that attracted him so much that he gave up his meditation, became a householder, and produced a very wonderful personality. Her name was Sakuntala. She's described in the Bhagavatam also, a great soul. But then after some time he thought, look what happened to me. I used to be a powerful yogi. I was so fixed in my meditation upon the Lord in the heart. And now look at me. So he went back and he was thinking, now I'm not going to be disturbed again. And if anything, if Indra tries his program again, I'm ready. I'm ready. So Indra saw, oh yeah, he's again at it. So he sends another society girl named Rumba. She comes. Same thing, ankle bells. And then this time, rather than getting attracted, he becomes angry. Now, anger is also a feature of the material energy when one's desire is not fulfilled. One gets frustrated and says that anger is the younger brother of desire. So now he's going to protect himself by the principle of anger. At least he thinks so. And so he has some power, and he shoots his fire out of his eyes, and she turns into, a burnt pakora. She's finished. Well, maybe it wasn't a pakora, but anyway. So the point was, it sounds humorous, but actually what happened, immediately he lost all his Shakti, all the benefit of all of his austerities, and now he was nothing. And so the principle is aversion is the other opposite of attraction, because in one sense they say that the thing is, aversion and attraction is the same thing. It's like a coin with two sides. And so one has to, the point is, one has to become fully Krishna conscious. Otherwise, one cannot overcome. But we see even those who were very advanced, Prabhupada mentions in the second chapter of the first canto, where he says, many, and he uses the word many, great stalwarts who have climbed so high on the spiritual path, but somehow or other, a little inattention, and all of a sudden, there is fall down. But here, now does this verse say you should get married if you want protection? Is that what it says? It says like, well, here is where you're safe. With a chaste and faithful wife following the regulative principles within the Grihastha ashram. And that's a principle of truth, no doubt about that. But the woman has to be qualified, excuse me, and the man also has to be fixed in devotional service. Otherwise, the protection may not be there. As Prabhupada also mentions, of course, in Vedic culture, Jai Sri Sri Radha Madhava Asta Saki Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada mentions in Vedic culture that in order to protect innocent girls from being corrupted by such lusty men, they create a prostitute house where, rather than polluting the rest of society, a man, because it says this, and maybe you don't agree with it, but it says this, a man has an inclination for more than one woman. Hare Krishna. Think about that one. But that's Srila Prabhupada. Unless he's fully Krishna conscious, there's a tendency to have that wanderlust looking around. It's there. Don't try to hide it and make believe it's not there. It's there. But society has created this, at least Vedic society, now it's considered illegal, but in certain places of the world it still goes on, is to have prostitutes, so these young girls in society, the rest of society, is not disturbed by such personalities. There's one story where one leper, he was married to a very qualified, beautiful, and chaste lady. But he had heard about this prostitute, and he became interested in having her service. So he decided that he wanted to go to the prostitute. Now his wife, she also understood his mind, and she was thinking, my husband wants to go there. And I'm a very obedient wife to my husband, so whatever my husband wants, I should, allow him to happen. So she's thinking, in order to facilitate, because this prostitute was such an expensive personality, she was so high class, that this leper, although he wanted to meet her, he couldn't afford it. So his wife came. She came to meet the prostitute, and she explained how her husband really wants, and she started doing service for the prostitute. And the prostitute was really amazed. Why is he coming here? He has such a wonderful, beautiful, qualified, chaste wife. Why does he want to come here? So she was thinking, okay, so the wife went back, and she said, all right, send your husband. So the man came, and she played a little game with him. She cooked, but she put the items in 3 different types of pots. She put everything she cooked in a leaf plate, in a golden plate, and in a silver plate. And she served all 3 plates to him. The same thing, in 3 plates. So he's thinking, why is she putting the same thing in 3 different plates? So he asks, and she says, just go home, it's all the same. Just go home, it's all the same. So I think he got the message, but that story illustrates that, this desire to, and Prabhupada said the dog is also enjoying it, but he does it on the street. The people, the human beings has a secret apartment, and they have so many amorous alankaras surrounding it, so it's become some kind of romantic, but it's all the same. It's all the same. What does it mean? It's that it's purposeful for creating children. It's meant for recreation, and sorry about that. It's meant for procreation, not recreation. Okay. And it's one of the principles by which the whole society becomes disturbed. You look at society today. It's all centered around enjoying sense gratification and epitomized by sex life. I remember one of my dear godbrothers, he was telling me he had to do some construction work on a house. And so he had to buy some glue for putting, I don't know, what do they call those, tiles. He needed tile glue to do the work in the house. So he went to one store that sells. And he's looking at the different varieties of tile glue, and there was 19 different brands on the shelf. 19. So he's thinking, which one is the best one? So he decides to ask the clerk in the store, which one's the best one? And the man comes back with one with a kind of like half-naked girl on the can. He said, they're all the same, but everyone buys this one. That's what sells, It's not so much the inside, it's the outside. So we see how society, propagates this idea in such a way. But devotees, they know that this is the pitfall of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, they very strongly avoid it. And how can you actually overcome it? And that is the power of our chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. The holy name of the Lord is, as it says, Kalir Doshanidi Rajan Asti Eko Mahagun Kirtana Eva Krishna Siyam Mukta Sangam Param Bhajet. It destroys all of the faults in Kali Yuga and brings one to the stage of purified consciousness and qualify one to go back home, back to the spiritual world. The chanting is very powerful. There was one devotee. You don't mind me telling stories, do you? I don't know much about philosophy. But one devotee, he gets a call from his ex-girlfriend. She says, I want to meet you tonight. I want to just, because it's been a long time since I've seen you. She didn't know he had become a devotee. So she wanted to meet him again. So he said, fine. And he's thinking, I'm going to be like Haridas Thakur. I'm going to sit here and just chant. So she came, sat there. It was in the evening. It was just the two of them. And he was mostly chanting. And she was thinking, I don't think he's interested in talking to me. So she became a little restless, and after some time, this is the way it was described to me, and she left. And then he went back, and the next morning, he said to his spiritual master, I passed the test. I did it. I didn't fall down. My spiritual master said, you fell down so many times. Referring to in the mind. So that's also, there's not a, what we say, a gross sinful reaction for that, but it can, by falling down in the mind means that one is moving in the wrong direction. And it's also a subtle form of sex desire. Yeah. And so here, and Prabhupada says, unless there is rigid, and uses the word rigid, and systematic training of the brahmachari by the expert spiritual master. And then he goes on to qualify that. And unless the student is very obedient to the guidance of the spiritual master, it is sure that the so-called brahmachari will fall prey to sex life. So this is the power of the material energy. And so, therefore, one has to be very conscious and cautious. Conscious of Krishna and cautious that material energy is like very precarious. At any time, we have so many examples. Just a little deviation in speech and activity can lead. I have another story. One brahmachari, he's out doing, Sankirtan. This was in Croatia. Hare Krishna. And he was all alone, and he was living in a hotel. He was a very good book distributor. Very good. But he had no association, and he was just doing Sankirtan on his own. So he came to me, and he told me this whole story. He said, then I was just on my computer, and somehow or other, he says, I don't know how it happened, but something came up on the screen that shouldn't have came up. In other words, he went to a website that wasn't, brahmachari. And so, but he became enamored. At first he became attracted, then he became enamored by that. And then he started to think about it. And he became so disturbed in his mind, he couldn't chant. He couldn't go out and do his Sankirtan. And he was in a very despondent situation, realizing that he had become so attracted that it simply became impossible for him to continue his devotional service. So he came to me, asked me for some advice. I said, just chant. Chant, chant, chant. Prabhupada said, he said, if your Krishna consciousness gets disturbed and you cannot somehow or other find a way to get free from that, he said, just sit down and chant the holy names of the Lord. And by prolonged chanting, after some time, your mind will start to move away from these disturbances into a more peaceful consciousness. So that's the power of Krishna's holy name. It can overcome anything. We have the example of Srila Haridas Thakur, how he overcome the attraction of such a powerful prostitute who was expert. But Srila Haridas Thakur was Namacharya. He was chanting Sudanam, the pure chanting of the holy name. So we have to come to that stage in order to purify ourselves from all tendencies from material life, because material life, we see so many times, how is it possible such a great devotee who has done so many wonderful services, opened temples, write books, has so many followers, all of a sudden they're gone. That's the power of Maya in the form of the opposite sex. And that goes for both sides. Sometimes it says that, what does it say? Can't remember how it's phrased, but Prabhupada uses the word woman as the opposite sex, not as a gender terminology. He says for man, woman is woman, and for woman, man is woman. So the word woman refers, in this context, that sex or the opposite gender, which is the form of attraction, like that. So I don't have any great formulas, but just chant the holy names of the Lord and realize that, this material world is a very dangerous place. Here we are in Mayapur Dham, and we're protected pretty much by the Dham, by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and we're engaged in so many transcendental activities. We forget about all of these things. But Maya's always looking for some in. Maya knows your weakness. She's like, when you go into a boxing ring, and two people are fighting and they're punching each other, if one person hits one person and there's some blood, that becomes a weak spot. So that person will try to hit that spot again because he knows that's the person's most vulnerable spot. So Maya's like that. She knows exactly where you're weak, and sometimes you think, hey, why am I getting attacked the same way all the time? Because that's where you're weak. So you cover that area, and then she'll look for another area. And then when she can't find any area, she says, Hare Krishna, all glories to you, you made it. My service is done. I hope you enjoy your life with Krishna. In other words, she starts to glorify you. Yeah. So Maya, in one sense, in the absolute sense, is the friend of the devotees. So she's helping us become aware of where we are weak and how we can overcome that and make progress in devotional service. Okay, so there's only 10 minutes left for the class. Any questions, comments? Let's see where we have Maharaj. Yeah.
Thank you, Maharaj. I think the correct phrase was like Prabhupada said, man is Maya for woman and woman is Maya for man. That's what Prabhupada said. So
yeah, on the material platform.
Yeah. When Nrsimha Brahmachari asked Mahaprabhu to recite Bhagavatam, and then Mahaprabhu told him, you go to Ramanana Rai and listen Bhagavatam from him.
Right.
So then he went to Ramanana Rai and he heard that he was taking care of the young girl, massaging them.
Yeah, the Devi Dasis who were dancing for Lord Jagannath, They were young girls. So his service was to massage their bodies with oil and prepare them for the dance.
And Nrsimha Brahmachari was shocked to hear that.
That he should go to such person, yeah.
Yeah.
But Mahaprabhu said his mind is like stone. His mind is like stone. It's not diverted. He doesn't even become aware that this is a force of attraction. He is simply absorbed in his service, that's all. So, we can't imitate that. But we can understand that is a level of Krishna consciousness that is achievable. Thank you. Yes. Sri Devi has a question. Is there anyone else with questions? Okay.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. I would like some clarity on subtle sex desire. On gross level, it may be very easy to give it up, but what about subtle sex desire?
The example is when you have a weed and you want to cut the weed, you cut the weed at the level of the ground, but the root stays in. And therefore, in due course of time, that root will again blossom into another weed. So that's the subtle part. It's not so noticeable. But it's manifested in profit. I want some material gain from my spiritual practice. Adoration, I want to be known as a great devotee. Distinction, I want to be seen as someone who is able to, do so many wonderful things as a devotee. Now these are the subtle aspects. So the point is that if you don't get rid of the subtle, or don't overcome the subtle, purify the subtle, it can also return again into the gross form. So therefore, the process of purification begins on the gross level, and then it meant to go deeper into the consciousness and uproot all these more subtle forms of material tendencies, desires. And for a practitioner, many of these things are not even noticeable. If you really want to know what is your problem in spiritual life, just ask someone who's a close friend. They'll tell you. Say, Bhakti Tirtha Swami used to do this exercise. I remember I was part of it. And we were in Chicago, and he had just given a class. He said, now you break up into different groups of pairs, and you have to ask each other, what is it about me that is not Krishna conscious? What's my fault? I mean, not so many devotees were enthusiastic for the program. But it's kind of like a good exercise. If you have a false ego, you can't really get into it. But you start to understand in a coordinated, controlled way, not done in a very, mean-spirited way. Well, I do have some anarthas, some difficulties, some tendencies towards, that are not Krishna consciousness. How can I learn about them? So we can try to do it through introspection, understanding, reading the philosophy, and practicing. But when you have a close friend, or you can say even your spiritual master, what do I need to do to overcome my obstacles in devotional service? It's a nice exercise. And sometimes you hear things that you don't expect. But that's what it's about. So these subtle things have to also be destroyed. Otherwise, they can come back in the form of the gross again, like that. And the more you engage in devotional service, the more the tendency is, and you're successful, you're doing some, people will come up they'll say, nice service, well done, you did, so the tendency, and one very senior devotee said, when you start getting these reciprocation, when people start praising you, you should know you're in a dangerous position. But it's natural to praise devotees, because devotees are inspired by other devotees, and they want to show their happiness or their, they want to show in some way that, well, this is very nice, but you have to also be careful. Like last night, I got that really strong by one lady. She just really let into me. I think, oh my God, what am I going to do now, Krishna? So I said, well, I think I just make believe it didn't happen. But it did. She started to praise me, and I was thinking, oh no, what am I going to do now? But she was so illuminated and enlivened, inspired, that I didn't say anything. I just, help. Because what can you do? If you say, thank you very much, I can see you're an expert understanding of character, then you're in trouble. So, I didn't, Hare Krishna. So it happens. And so that's natural, it says, because it says in the Shastras, 11th canto, it says, one should not praise another and one should not criticize another, because praise and criticism always fall short of the actual reality. There's much more there. But then the second verse, which follows that verse, which is the first verse in that chapter, it says, but one can praise. Because that is the nature of Vaishnavas. They glorify devotees. They praise devotees. We have to be careful not to accept it as it's about me. All glories to my spiritual master. All glories to the association of devotees. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. You have to push it on. Not like 90% glories for Prabhupada and I get 10%. Because I did something, I should get part of it. Not like that. So, because we may also think like that. Okay? There's one question over here.
There's a question here.
Where?
Hello, Hare Krishna.
Way back in the back there?
Yeah.
Let's see, I need my glasses. Okay, go ahead.
Govinda Maharaj, His Holiness Govinda Maharaj, Govinda Maharaj, he gave a lecture, a beautiful lecture in Bhubaneswar on Nishingadev's appearance day. And he said there is one prayer, he called it the ultimate prayer.
The Ajamil prayer?
That we should pray. I read it to you and to everybody. Yadiyasyasi me kaman varamstam varadashava kamanam ritya samroham bhavatas tu vrinivaram. And the verse is a translation. O my Lord, best of the givers of benedictions, if you at all want to bestow a desirable benediction upon me, then I pray from your Lordship, as within the core of my heart there may be no material desires. It's a verse from the Srimad-Bhagavatam. So Maharaj said, offer this prayer, and if the Lord grants you this boon, then all material desires are gone. This is a prayer that we all should offer. We all have lusty desires. Who will root them out? So everyone should offer prayers to the lotus feet of the Lord, and from the core of the heart pray, my Lord, if you want to give me a boon, please take away all lusty desires. And that I never at any time, in any condition, under any circumstances, material desires will crop up.
Right.
And then he continues, when Lord
Nishingadev.
When Nishingadev was ready to give him any boon he desired, Prahlad Maharaj asked for this boon. This is a lecture of the Pianist Day of Lord Nishingadev by Srila Govinda Maharaj in Bhubaneswar. So we call this the ultimate prayer, and I think this is a very important help in this regard, to learn this prayer by heart and recite it as much as possible.
I can tell you the prayer if you want to hear it. You want to repeat the prayer?
Yeah.
Om Namo Bhagavate Narasringhaya. Namas Teja Tejase Avirbhava Rajanaka Rajadamstra Kamasayan Radaya Tamo Grasa Om Swaha Abhayam Atmani Bhuyasta Om Shram. It's from Srimad-Bhagavatam, 5th canto, 8th chapter, verse, 5th canto, 18th chapter, 8th verse. Prahlad Maharaj prays, my dear Lord, please, Brajanaka Drumstra, you have powerful teeth and nails. Uproot these desires for fruitive activities which are situated so deeply within my heart. And please give us fearlessness in this material world. Abhayam Atmani Bhuyasta. So that's a beautiful prayer, and it should be recited regularly. 5:18:8 Srimad-Bhagavatam. Thank you. So one more question, I think, and then we have to conclude.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, in the purport, Prabhupada again and again, he's explaining this principle of a fixed wife. Fixed wife. So, I have observed, like some elders, it's like when entering Grihastha ashram or after Grihastha ashram, they get divorced, you know. So this culture of like there is a second option, you know, we can get divorce and then later we can get, after entering Grihastha ashram, they keep that option of divorce, you know, like, and how is it that we implement this principle of fixed wife?
Well, this idea that it may not work out, yes, even though it's working now, is contrary to the practice of Krishna consciousness. Because Prabhupada says, even if there is some difficulties, should try and somehow ameliorate those difficulties, correct those difficulties. Prabhupada, when he began the movement, he was doing the marriage ceremonies. He was actually officiating the marriage. But after 3 years, he stopped. He said, you're not taking it seriously. So he didn't do it anymore. But he speaks about that divorce is not really an option. You might say, in emergency cases, it's a consideration, but it shouldn't be part of the marriage certificate that you put it into the clause, you know. No, so the idea is, by the power of Krishna consciousness, we can somehow or other overcome. Like I say to people who go through that situation, say, remember what it was like when you first met. Go back to that mindset and try to relive those days and forget about what may be going on now that is causing you to want to break apart. But to overcome that requires counseling, requires some serious understanding of the problem. But the problem is, as Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati said, there's only one problem, and that is lack of Krishna consciousness. So for Krishna conscious, we can somehow or other fulfill our vows, because marriage is a vow. It's a vow. It's a very sacred vow, and shouldn't be dispensed with so easily. Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai Jai His Holiness Srila Candramauli Swami Maharaja.